Welcome to Breaking Biscuits, the Experience. Today, Mark, we're going to be talking about the title of our podcast is It's Not Working, Now What? So stay tuned.
Yes.
Well, hi, Mark. It's good to see you again. By the way,
Yeah.
episode 27. We've been doing this for over
half a year.
Yeah, crazy.
Unbelievable.
Time flies by really quick, and we kind of been talking about leading yourself, and we kind of came up with this title just probably out of necessity, based on communication with others, but it's just like and it's likely to go in the directionally toward men today, but we're kind of, the thought process is what do you do now if it's like what you're doing is not working? You feel stuck. Life just doesn't feel like it's working, and you just don't know what those next steps are to take. And I would venture to say that if you could get and talk to a man by himself, and I'm going to talk about Christian men too, specifically.
Yeah.
Christian men by themselves, away from their spouse, and you said, tell me if it's working or not working. And I'm just saying, like, life, relationship, everything. Probably the majority, and probably a high majority, would say, yeah, it's not working. I feel invisible. I feel lost. I feel like my career has no meaning. I feel like it's not working at home. The relationship's not the way I thought I envisioned it. Like, life is just totally different than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to start with that first perception of, is it common for people, especially in their 20s, 30s, early 40s, kind of have an awakening moment and go, wow, life isn't what I expected it to be? Like, is that normal?
From my experience, it is. It's like about 30 years old, 30-ish in that realm. That's where you start seeing the issues and relational conflicts, and the mountains start rising up. People can't. They just have trouble navigating it. Because, gosh, you think about us when we were in our 20s, how much energy you had, 30s.
Right.
But I think that wake-up moment is a moment to decide, this is what I want, and I'm going to work and make sure we make it make sure it's supposed to be what it's supposed to be. Like, that's not just because something does not working, I think you have to dig really deep and say, we're supposed to be here, we're supposed to be this, and we're supposed to be that, and I'm do that. There's just something inside you have to dig really deep, I think.
Yeah.
Just dig really deep and say, I'm not. That's what I always did. I always it goes back to believing in yourself when all else fails. And that's hard if you live in a conflicting kind of relationship, or you're in some kind of unmanageable debt, financial stress, or whatever. You have a family problem, whatever. It's hard to, it's the hardest part is believing in myself. Like, yeah, I know I'm supposed to be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna quit.
Right. Well, I think you're saying you're not going to quit on yourself, right? That's part of it. So, and that's probably the hardest part, is because I think we have in our minds when we're early, we're in our 20s and 30s, is, we're going to make life serve us. And a lot of times we end up feeling like we're serving life, like life is leading us instead of us leading life. And I think, just from my perspective, is that it takes some real strength to say, no, I'm not going to be pulled in this direction or that direction. I'm going to focus on I'm going to focus on the things that I value and the things that are important for the family, for the relationship, for each individual, because it is so easy to get distracted in the world that we live in today.
What's that linebacker for Baltimore Ravens, Ray something? You remember him?
Yeah. I'll look it up while you're talking.
His name is Ray Lewis.
Ray Lewis, yep.
He did a Hall of Fame speech, and I happened to just click on and saw it. And he said, I want to thank my grandma because she always taught me that you need to live life or else it'll live you. Don't let life live you. And I think that's probably what we're, in a really weird way, what we're saying is a lot of men may be looking at themselves and go, man, life is living me.
Yeah.
It tells me when to get up. It tells me where to go to work. It tells me how much I'm going to get paid. It tells me what I owe. It tells me how much I'm going to have left over. And it tells me the windows are getting shorter and shorter, like when you get home, Mm-hmm. I think it's easy to let life live you when you're young. But when you have younger kids, it's kind of enjoyable and fulfilling, I guess I want to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, because we get to see them grow, and I mean, we all know what happens when they hit teenage years. It all changes a bit. But then the beauty is when they're in their 20s, you become, the guru of life again. So it's just trying to rush the process. But I when I think about when something's not working, can someone communicate what it is that's not working? Like in my own life, if I said, well, it's not working, typically for me, what that would mean is I'm not at peace. I feel pulled in directions that I don't want to go. Yeah. I feel like my focus is on things that aren't meaningful long term. And what's interesting to me, Mark, when we think about this, if we were talking to men today, which we are through the podcast, they might say, well, my relationship's not working. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting to me is if the relationship's not working, it's probably the very thing that they really desire to work the most, but they put the least amount of time in. Because it's not working, we have a tendency to want to pull back as men, isolate, and put our energy and effort in the places we feel valued or we feel productive. So if the relationship's not working, we go find something that does work. That's just the way we think, and I think the way we're made. And that's what kind of gives us the ability to compartmentalize and live in peace. But the real truth is, and I think all men would acknowledge this, their desire is that the relationship would fulfill those needs and not a hobby or not something else. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I see where you're going. It's like
it's the way it was in the beginning, right?
How could you have courage to just say this not working for me, or I don't have the capacity for that right now?
Yeah.
When you get older, though, that becomes way more prevalent. When you get about 50, 55, you start becoming the get off my lawn guy. You just tell people, but when you're younger, you just want it all to work out. And I got to tell you, Toby, there are people that we coach almost daily where the couples, I want to say women mostly, but I want to say couples, have an expectation of their mate, and the mate has no earthly idea what they want them to do.
Yeah.
And that just creates chaos because it's like a built-in resentment and I think we overlooked it when we were younger. When we were younger in our relationship, we just overlooked everything.
Well, because it was fresh, I think everybody serves the other person. All right, Mark, we got you back. We had a little bit of technical difficulty, but we've been talking about just the difficulties in life, and men specifically feeling like the relationship's not working, and kind of what to do next. So we'll continue here. What's your, like? Let me start by asking a question. Like if you were coaching someone and they're just saying, "Man, I just feel like my relationship's not working. I'm not satisfied in the sense of life in general, but I feel invisible. I feel not heard. I feel not wanted." Those are common complaints in relationships, right?
Yeah.
What would be your like advice to a man that feels that way?
One thing that did help me that I learned in my old age is my happiness is my responsibility. So I can't necessarily put that on my relationships.
Yeah.
And it really, honestly, I know it's crazy, but it goes back to loving yourself, believing in yourself, believing in what you're doing. I think me personally, and I'm sure all the people we coach get sidetracked into this, not selfish mode, but like, when is it my turn kind of thing. We've talked about that a couple of weeks ago. But man, you can spiral out of control really fast.
Yeah.
And communication's the key always. What do you do? I was going to ask you, what's your thoughts on when stuff's not working in your life like you anticipated, or in any area, business, work?
Probably answer it easier in business because I'm more attuned to business and relationships. I'm just better at it. I'm not great at relationships. I'm sure there's people that maybe listen to this would confirm that. But in business, I think it's true in relationships. The first place you look is at yourself. And you do it objectively, not from a condemnation standpoint, but you have to objectively look at it. And honestly, it's why a lot of businesses fail, is because the leader doesn't have the ability to look at themselves objectively and not emotionally. And meaning, specifically what I mean is, if it's not working, we want to tell ourselves we're a failure. We want to tell ourselves we don't know what we're doing. We want to tell ourselves all these negative things. But in business, you look at the facts and you objectively look at it and say, okay, this is not working because of X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's a market condition. Maybe it's decisions I've made that were wrong, whatever. It's like, okay, well, what do I do from here? Like, what do I need to change about me and my leadership in order to make the situation better? So in business, that's what we do. And we adjust course. And it's not a big deal if you're not self-condemning yourself in the process. But in relationships, like speaking from experience, I find it's much more difficult because there's a lot of self-condemnation that comes in, and so it's like, okay, well, I own my mistakes, which is fine, but condemning myself for those mistakes isn't the best way to get out of to move forward. And so self-forgiveness is, I think, an incredible gift you give yourself, is to say, well, I forgive myself for my part in what's not working. And so if I can forgive myself, then maybe I can step into what can I do different to make it work, or to make it better, or whatever the case may be. Because, Mark, this is what I'm thinking of as we're talking about this. In the beginning of a relationship, there's no history. Like, we're starting afresh. The only baggage is what we brought with us. And so because there's no history, it's easy to be, accepting. It's easy to be loving, caring, and there's an infatuation process as well that we're going through. So it's just a lot easier. But the longer you're together, the more opportunity there are for, obviously, life challenges. It can come in any direction. So the history is built. And then as the history is built, then how you navigate through that is really going to determine whether you stay connected or not. And then the second part, the way that I really want to answer your question, because you asked that direct question, the second thing is, you kind of alluded to it earlier. Do I have the courage to say something? Like, do I have the courage to tell my mate what's not working? I might be wrong. I might have the wrong perception, but do I have the courage to say, well, this isn't working for me? And I think most men, because of our society, self-condemn to the point that they just don't even feel like they can say anything, or they wait till they're angry and then they say it. And then it's not heard when you're angry. I mean, it's heard, but it's heard in a hurt way, not in a productive way. So I agree. It's back to communication and saying, okay, well, there was a point in time this relationship was vibrant, alive, and just really connected. So you have the ingredients. The question is, if you put them on the shelf, can you dust them off and put them back into action? And how do you do that? And it really takes both. I think both sides are probably self-condemning, to be honest with you. It's like, you made a comment earlier, is like, well, I can't teach somebody to love themselves.
So what I'm hearing you saying, you have to, like, if it was a business, it's almost easier because you self-reflect, you analyze, you have awareness.
It's not personal. It's just business.
And you take the emotional part out of it.
Exactly.
Because you want to be successful, because you know you're called to do this.
Exactly.
You're called to be in a relationship, but the variable is you don't know what the other person's, how they're going to respond, and that's why love is such an incredible risk. But I think we have to learn to fall and not fail. I think we need to learn how to say, yeah, I missed it, but I'm not a failure. I think that's what you're saying. Adam and Eve had that same, they could have fixed that, but they didn't. So what I'm hearing in my heart right now is, if things aren't working, you have a choice to blame what you're not getting, blame your mate, blame your business, blame economy, blame. You have a choice to blame, or you can self-reflect and say, I can do this. I'm created for more than this. I can work my way, live my way through this. And
I call it blame and shame, because if you blame, shame's coming. It's knocking at the door.
Yeah.
And, but
and
yeah,
I love the story because I just always wondered, what if they would have had a conversation on the way back to the trees before they made those aprons and said, yeah, we need to talk to God about this. We're better than this. This is not what we signed up for, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like be selfish and blame, and what I see in my coaching is the men, and particularly the men in our world, they get angry or they isolate because they don't know how to communicate.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them don't know how to communicate because history tells us, if we say X, Y, and Z, I already know the response, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult place to be, but it's a place many are. And I think part of it is the society. When I think about society, I was going to say, when I think about this demographic of a 20 to 40-year-old, most of them grew up in the technology phase. And there's so much demand in our society to succeed. And success is portrayed as stuff nowadays, like a certain type of car, a certain type of house, even a certain type of phone is considered more successful. Well, what kind of phone do you have? It's crazy how people think of life and success now. And I think it gets in the way of all the other, because you only have 24 hours a day and you can only focus on so many things. You can only put your energy into so many things. And you and I, at this age, the two old men with computers that don't work all the time, is that we've learned that none of those things really matter at this stage of life. Like they matter in the sense, you don't want to struggle, but they don't matter in the sense of, do they bring fulfillment? No, of course not. There's no fulfillment in any of that. But yes, we'll burn 2 or 3 decades of our life to obtain that, only to do what most people do in their late 60s and 70s, is sell it all. And if you don't do it in your 60s or 70s, your kids will do it when you're gone.
Yeah.
And so it just doesn't matter. It's like, I think it's the key is trying to find that balance in life of what's important. Like you and I have talked privately, and we'll challenge each other and say, well, what is important in your life? Like, what are the top 3 or 4 things that you value at this stage in life? And if you can't answer those, I think you're going to struggle if you can't even start there.
Yeah. You can't be mad about everything.
No.
You have to be
Well,
specific about what your goals. But I was going back to the business analogy before I go. I got to go. But the business analogy would be, you would take your top leader, head, advisors, whatever, and